Hello. Are we here? Yes? Okay. So, well, thanks for having me. What I wanted to actually do is have a conversation about social media. So I can't have a conversation like this. If you want to join the conversation, you're welcome to. Come in. We can sit on the floor. We can hang out. I'm going to sit down. I would like to have more of an unconference setting where we talk about what's going on, because if we're all in this room, we actually really care about this space, and I think we really care about this space. I'm more interested in hearing what you have to say as I'm going to say, so please feel free to come down, hang out, let's just have fun, instead of it being like all weird, because that's weird. Like, it's like, what do you do? Like, if you were me and you were a professional speaker, what would you do? Like, I can't. So, come on down. What I thought I would actually do is start off by, well, I'll tell two stories, and then I'll hope that the first story is somewhat interesting and hopeful to you in terms of you developing some sort of platform or business or way to scale what you're doing using social media. And then what I thought I would do is give you a bit of some sort of new thoughts that I have, a little bit about the space, and then get your feedback, and then we can hopefully break into a conversation, because I know a lot of you in the room, and I think a lot of you have. Is it off? What did I do wrong here? No, it's on. Okay. Check one. Is that good?
Is that better?
Is that better?
Is that better back there a little bit?
I don't like putting the thing right in my face. And so then we'll have a conversation from there. So first story is a little bit about the book, 6 Pixels Separation. It's funny to release a book, being me, because it's like people are excited about a book, and I'm like, it's the strangest thing in my world that I face every day, because I've been blogging since 2002, 2003, and you get people leaving comments like you like your blog and whatever, but then you have a book, and all of a sudden it's like a big deal. Like, would having a book for you be a big deal in your life? Like, just not.
Sure.
It would, right? Why? But like, it's just a published thing. I mean, you can publish every single day in text and just audio and videos to the world. And so we have this weird thing that comes to us from generations before about there's some sort of weird credibility in having a book. And it's an interesting thing. So what I thought I would do is walk you a bit through the story of the book, and then the back end, sort of like the making of, and then we'll sort of talk about it. So here's the deal. My real thing is actually writing. I own a digital marketing agency, but I like to write. It was always, in my past, I used to be a journalist. I still am a journalist. Love the passion. And is anyone else in here a writer? So you know, as a writer, the thing is to hopefully eventually write a book. It's just like a thing. It's just, you're on this, it's like a Moby Dick, and you've got like a fork and some tartar sauce, and you're going after this whale, and you don't know where it is, and you're going to hopefully find it. So from the late 80s, I always had this sort of thing of potentially writing a book, and it started crystallizing a lot for me when I started realizing in the early days that this personal branding thing is actually something. And I don't mean it in terms of whether it's a good word, personal branding versus reputation, but the fact that we hit this really interesting time in about 2000, 2001, where anybody could now actually express themselves to the world using these platforms, and that's a pretty big shift. And what I realized in the early days, and seeing people like Robert Scoble and Chris Brogan and all these guys who were also blogging at the same time in very different ways, was that they were actually building audience and credibility that had a semblance of being as powerful, if not more powerful, than a lot of companies, and actually fairly big companies. Like, they actually had the attention and interest of more people. And I thought this was like a big deal. And so the initial sort of idea of the book was to do some sort of hybrid of personal branding, social media, whatever. I had met with a bunch of literary agents, and I had met with a bunch of publishers. And then I realized that I was making the mistake that I swore I would never make in my previous career. My previous career was 15 years in the music industry. And is anybody in the music industry or familiar with the music industry? No? A couple people? So, maybe a little. You would know that if you are a Canadian artist, one of the worst things you can do is actually sign in Canada. And again, I was on the business side of it. So the best thing you could do if you were a great artist was you could sign in the US, you get a huge global deal. They would still distribute music in Canada, and you would have US management and all that sort of stuff. That was really the sort of way in which you could really explode your band. And if you look back to when I was really into music, you would see bands like, Tragically Hip, who were just huge in Canada, but, they could travel 45 minutes across the border and they could be playing a place smaller than this, right? Just the way that it was. So I was meeting with a bunch of agents and a bunch of publishers, and I was like, let me see if I can get something going in the States. And it was a bit harder, it's a bit more challenging, the way of the world, I guess. And then I was blogging and I was podcasting, doing my stuff and putting things out there. And I got a call from HarperCollins Canada because they had an author who had a book that was coming out in about 6 months' time called Predictably Irrational. And the book was written by this guy, Dan Ariely. So the punchline to all this is that the book eventually came out and became the #1 business book on Amazon in the world last year. It was the #1. I mean, this book was a huge book, like Freakonomics, like one of those types of books. So at the time, we didn't know this. Right? The book wasn't out yet. It was just a name, and it was a new author, and whatever. So they asked me if I would want to interview him for my podcast, and I thought, well, I don't need 6 months lead time, right? Like I'm not like Fast Company. Like I can just do it the week it comes out and publish it the next day. Like that's my life. And they said, well, we'll send you the advanced book. Take a read. Let us know what you think. So I said, great. They sent me the book, and obviously the book is damn good because it became this huge bestseller. And I was like, wow, this book is really good. I would like to speak to the guy. So we get Dan on the phone, and I have a conversation with him, and it's a great conversation. I thought it was interesting. He was a fascinating guy. And as we're about to wrap up, he goes, because I was reading your blog, have you ever considered writing a book? And I'm like, yeah, I mean, of course, yeah, that would be great. I said, why haven't you? Well, I've met a couple of agents, and it wasn't, really what I wanted, and publishers in Canada, I'm looking more for a US type thing, because, I should introduce you to my agent. And I'm like, sure. Because in my head, I'm like thinking music industry, like saying, like when somebody who's got a big publishing deal and a big agent says, I should introduce you to my agent, to me, what I hear in my head is, we're like celebrities in LA and someone says, let's do lunch. Which is basically like a big middle finger, like, that was nice talking to you, nothing's gonna ever come of this. So I thought, okay, nothing will ever come of this. And not even an hour later, he actually sends an email with an introduction to his literary agent. And so, what do you do? Well, I go online and I do a search for this literary agent. I go, is this guy legit? And like, who does he represent? And it turns out this guy represents some amazing people, like some of the best-selling books. Crossing the Chasm was this guy. He does all the books for The Onion. He does John Wood leaving Microsoft to change the world. So he's a major agent guy. And so I sent an email. I started getting excited. I sent him like, oh yes, that would be very nice to meet you and discuss my book project, whatever. And he actually sends me back an email and says, I've been looking at your blog and I was watching some videos of you on YouTube. I would like to see you and figure out if we can figure out what this book is. So, because when you come to New York, we'll spend a half day together, and I'll figure it out. Cool. Go to New York. I'm sitting in his office, and he's older than us. He's probably, I would say, in his late 50s, early 60s, maybe. So he's, close your eyes and visualize a New York literary agent, and that's him. With the hair, this sort of sweater, and he's always, walking into places and doing, going to plays and book clubs and stuff, and so that's him. And so we're sitting in his office, and it's a nice boardroom, and he's talking about the book, and I can't, he's got on 2 very weird socks. Like his socks are just totally strange. One of them has like polka dots in different colors, the other one's got stripes. And I just can't focus because in my head, all I'm thinking about is the Seth Godin. I don't know if you ever read that story in Seth Godin many books ago, where he talks about this company called Little Mismatched. Have you heard of this? So this company basically was created to create socks for little girls, and you can buy these socks in threes. You can't buy them in sets. You can only buy them in sets of 3, and none of the socks match. And the idea is that these girls wear these socks and go on the playground and go, look at my socks, and they're all different and they're fun, and also, it's got a good social message too, which is empowering girls to be unique and different and think creatively. So I'm like, well, why is this guy in his 60s wearing these little misses sort of creepy? It's a little and so he's talking, and it's like Charlie Brown. It's like, womp, 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 womp. So all I'm looking at is these socks. I literally can't focus on it. So I'm like, hold on. His name's Jim. I'm like, Jim, are you wearing little mismatched socks? And he looked at me like I was crazy. Like he looked at me like, how would you even know what that was? And he was like, how do you know what those are? And I said, well, there's that Seth Godin thing, and I've seen them at retail, and it's just a very cool brand, and what the hell are you doing wearing them? Like, it's awful. And he goes, interestingly enough, the woman who created this is best friends with my daughter. and she was a literary agent for my company from